EA announced just today that the Codemasters game that was developed by Slightly Mad Studios, a, a studio that they just purchased recently, I believe, in the past year or so. Am I right on that?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. The They announced that the game that they've been working on, the Project Cars series, has now been ended at this point. They are no longer making Project Cars games. This is right after their founder left the studio last month, and after the $1.2 billion acquisition of Codemasters. Yeah, so the the founder, of course, had some words to say as to what happened with them ending Project Cars, and his quote from his tweet was, "EA keeping on being awesome. I said my bit, and I stand by every word as they continue to prove them. How are those numbers? Sorry, I mean people with hopes, dreams, and families, looking at the bottom of those spreadsheets." Basically saying that EA is just looking at them in regards to sales and not thinking of it as an artistic achievement that Project Cars was. Zero, what are their thoughts on EA killing Project Cars?
It's a bit of a sad thing, but honestly, it was kind of one of those things that it was a slow motion train wreck in action. Let's consider the history of the Project Car series. One came out, and it was one of those games that was trying to promise to be the next car simulator, and well, just it ended up kind of coming off a little bit arcadey, which kind of disappointed some people. So I think it kind of sold okay, and then Project Cars 2 came out, and then that one was a good incremental step towards being more closer to a simulator. So a lot of people were kind of happy with that. So it's just like, hey, that's kind of cool. Just this is a little bit more closer to what we're asking for. So great. And then 3 supposedly went back into the arcade racer direction, which soured a whole bunch of people. So word has been that the sales weren't too good. So, which third game not selling too great naturally means just low sales numbers, which means low revenue, which means just not great profits. So, and with EA being a publicly traded video game company who's always looking for just numbers to go bigger, Project Cars with not producing numbers that they're looking for is just kind of one of those things that it was just a matter of time until EA would just say, all right, so I think we have to kill Project Cars because it's just not meeting our target metrics and everything. So in my eyes, it was just kind of a slow motion train wreck, and just kind of a big question on when were they just going to kill it and just start shifting all the assets around to other projects like the new Need for Speed Unbound game and whatever other racing game projects that EA has in the works currently.
So I'm looking at the sales numbers right now for Project Cars, and this is, of course, VG charts, and they're not the most accurate. So keep that in mind. According to VG charts, with the sales metrics that they have, the total amount shipped when it comes to Project Cars as a series, 2.26 million for the entire series. And apparently 2 million of that is Project Cars. I don't know how accurate that is, to be absolutely honest. But let's favorably say it's 4 million, okay? And that maybe Project Cars is 2 million and the other two are, let's say, 1 million and a half a million, along those lines. Those are still pretty disappointing numbers when it comes to a series. When it comes to a car series where a lot of the quality car games make millions upon millions, like Forza and Gran Turismo. They are behemoths. They're like 7, 8, 9 million each iteration that they do to a certain extent. I'm not entirely sure of the numbers, but they do make a lot of sales. That's why they keep making more of them. And EA, like you mentioned, is a company that does look at the bottom line. They look at how much money do we have to put in to get max amount of profit. I don't think Project Cars really made a lot of sales to make an astounding amount of profit for Codemasters. Because if that were the case, and it did, I don't know what. Well, Codemasters does a lot of racing games, right? They do. What are the like? Didn't they have Dirt and stuff like that as well?
Dirt and the Dirt Rally games were under their purview. The Grid games are under Codemasters now.
Yeah.
The World Rally Championship games that were from another EA studio got moved to Codemasters now, so that's another thing that they do. Gosh,
F1, they have F1, and F1
yep,
does
F1 is
of
another
sales.
one. Yeah,
I mean, I'm looking at this and Grid's another one. They did a Grid one recently. I'm looking at these, and I'm seeing these games: Dirt Rally, Dirt, Grid, F1. Like, I see these games moving forward because they sell, and they've made quality iterations of these games in the past. Whereas Project Cars, I think 2 was considered the best, and even then, it wasn't great, but it was good. So people were like, "Yeah, it's fine, I guess." I guess that is what they would pretty much say. I would be concerned if it was F1 or Dirt were the ones that were being shit canned. Not so much with Project Cars. They're just looking at these racing games and going, well, Need for Speed makes more money than any of them, of course. But with these other games like Dirt, Grid, and F1, they do sell every time they do an iteration. They do great in sales. So let's put more money into those. And then this little game that didn't really live up to its potential, why don't we put that to the wayside? And maybe one day we'll get back to it, but honestly, they probably aren't. And that was it. And honestly, that's a sound business decision at that point. Unless they are doing something that essentially will say, oh, this will change the game. If we stick with this, we can do something that will do something very different in racing. I think this is the right move on EA. I'm not somebody who likes praising EA all that much, but in this circumstance, I mean, if I had the choice between F1, Grid, Dirt, and the other Codemasters games, I think that Project Cars would be the one I shit can to. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same mind. Just the other stuff like Dirt, F1, and Grid just have generally gotten better with the further iterations, and just Project Cars has unfortunately had kind of an iffy record. So just with it having an iffy record, that potentially shows risk. And well, we all know EA is real risk averse. So that's just one of the reasons that, at least in my mind, I kind of saw just Project Cars being put on the chopping block as kind of a eventuality. It was not a matter of if, it was more a matter of when.
Project Cars 3 was released in 2020. Okay? Here is the games that came out in the last year with Codemasters. Okay, in the last 2 years. F122, Grid Legends, F121, Dirt 5, F1 2020. I've heard these games get better reviews than Project Cars 3 did. It sucks, but I don't think anyone's losing their job, which is good. I don't think they would buy the studio and then shit can everybody for a bunch of IP that they're not going to use. They're probably going to be a support studio right now for, let's say, I don't know, Codemasters or for Need for Speed. Or maybe they'll work on something different. I don't know. I don't see them continuing Project Cars as a good thing if it wasn't getting the sales that they would have expected to get. And it was not because of the game. It was mainly because the quality wasn't up to what other people wanted in racing games. And with Forza at that point was still doing a Forza Motorsport and then a Horizon, and then people were looking forward to Gran Turismo. Grid was still coming out. Like, there were still options. And when there were still options and they're choosing not to play those games, why continue it unless you have something outstanding that will blow the competition away, which didn't look like they had? I think this is the right move.
Yeah, And to clarify with the history of Slightly Mad Studios, it was in November of 2019 that Codemasters bought them up. And
Okay.
then after that happened, February 2021, Codemasters was then bought up by Electronic Arts.
It is sad when, because I know there are fans of Project Cars. I know there's not many of them, but I think even those people will say that 3 was kind of a disappointment at this point. So even if like there were fans of Project Cars, they probably are also saying, yeah, it probably there's other games to play, whatever at this point. And with 1 and 2 now unavailable for sale, 3 will probably be there soon as well, probably in the next year. They probably will stop selling 3 because of contract issues. So yeah, like this is going to be a franchise that will no longer exist, essentially. You won't be able to play it. You won't be able to do anything with it at a certain point, which sucks. But again, that's the nature of the business at this point. If you're not producing, if you're producing a quality game that people who play it actually enjoy, I could possibly see EA saying, you know what, if we put more money into this, this might get bigger. But then you're also got to remember too, EA has a classic, beloved arcade racing franchise in Burnout that they do nothing with. So if Burnout has no chance, I don't think Project Cars has much of a chance either in this. So thank you for listening to this podcast segment. The Capital Games podcast is done every week, and we post it on all your favorite podcast apps, as well as segments on YouTube. If you want to listen to another segment, you can listen to a new one right there on the screen. We also do a movie podcast called the Capital Games Movie Club. If you'd like, you can go ahead and click on that and see all the movies that we have reviewed from that point. Thank you for listening, and we hope to hear from you soon.